known longer than most people here. My name's Chris, and I first came across this Gloucestershire lad back in 1971. I was a producer at BBC Radio Merseyside, and Mike, and he's always been an excellent freelance. He's always been willing to work and put in the long hours that freelancers have to do. And it was as a freelance working for a news agency in Southport, which is just north of Liverpool, where he learnt a lot of his craft in radio. I remember one memorable time when Mike was late coming in to assist with the news at Radio Merseyside, and I was getting pretty worried about this. When he did come in, what he explained to me was that morning he'd been doing another shift for another radio station in another part of Lancashire, but he'd also been assisting his boss, because the boss made his money on selling stories, particularly to the Sunday newspapers. And there was one story that on the commuter train from Southport into Liverpool, where someone had spotted an owl on the top of the carriages of the train, and his boss thought that if they could get this owl, a picture of it, it would make all the Sunday newspapers and he'd make a killing as far as money was concerned. So Mike was late, because apparently, I don't know whether it was Mike who did it or whether it was his boss, but they got a stuffed owl, nailed it to the top of the carriage, and poor Mike had to take a picture of this owl, and it certainly made the newspapers. From that time where we were together at Radio Merseyside and had some great times, our paths have intercrossed. When I was in London at the BBC, I knew Mike when he was working for Newsbeat, wasn't it, which was the Radio 1 pioneer news programme. And latterly, when I worked for Customs as the communications manager, over the last 15 years, I used Mike regularly as a communications expert to teach people around the country the ins and outs of communications, broadcasting, television and radio and newspapers. And there couldn't be a finer person than Mike to actually teach these people. And one of the things that always came back through the feedback from everyone who took part, and I think it's worth mentioning, Mike has a very gentle personality, and he gets on very well with people, and he doesn't irritate them. And as far as communications is concerned, that is number one. And in fact, he made many friends and made many new listeners for the ABC News Radio programme through travelling around with me across the country telling people about what he did. So Mike, you've had a very interesting and fruitful career. Long may it continue, and may I wish you health and happiness for the future on your 60th birthday. Thank you.
Oh, that's lovely.
I might just follow up on that. I mean, I haven't known Mike quite as long as Chris has. I'm Roger, by the way. I met Mike in 1973 when we both, well, I met him in a pub, funnily enough, next to Warren Street Tube Station in the Euston Road in London. And I remember Mike introduced me to the dubious delights of Castlemaine Bitter. And this pub was just opposite Capital Radio, where we both worked, and we both had our first introduction to commercial radio. And we went on to do many things over the years, and working with the BBC, etc. And Mike has always been the consummate professional when it comes to broadcasting and journalism, and particularly when it comes to freelancing, because when you're a freelancer, you've got to keep so many balls in the air at the same time, and you never say no, and you just keep on keeping on. And the fact that he's done this nearly for 40 years, I think, more or less, is a testimony to his professionalism and to his endurance too. But one story I must tell you about, which was told me only quite recently. When Mike worked in London, he achieved this rare privilege of working for commercial radio and the BBC at the same time, which very few people have been able to do. You can't convince the BBC that they can elect you to work for one of your rivals. Mike did it somehow or other. He worked for the BBC and commercial radio at the same time. And one day he was presenting a programme on LBC, which was a talk radio station, a commercial station in London. And being the consummate professional, he was going to turn up 5 nights a week and do it. Then he suddenly realised he was double booked. And being the consummate professional again, he realised that, well, do I say no to one of them, or do I try to combine both jobs at the same time? Now, I think this is one of the few occasions when the pack of cards have nearly sort of tumbled around him. But somehow he managed. Mike was presenting this program at 10 o'clock on LBC, but he was also presenting a program on the BBC, which finished at 10 o'clock in the evening, 10 p.m. in the evening. And he decided if he'd recorded the intro to the LBC program beforehand, he'd just have enough time to get from the BBC offices round to the LBC offices. So he recorded this 10-minute intro with music, etc., so that they could play at the beginning of the LBC program, just giving him enough time to get round to the corner. So he finished his BBC program at 10 o'clock on the dot. He had the taxi waiting for him outside to get to Gough Square in the East End of London. He raced down the stairs, came out of the broadcasting house, door opened, into a blinding blizzard. Taxi was there waiting for him. The cabbie said, "No way, mate, you're not going to get there in 10 minutes. And anyway, so I think probably Mike gave him a hefty tip. And somehow or other, he got there just as the tape was coming to an end. And he made it. And he made 2 fees in one day for a live performance, which is what all freelancers want to do. Mike has been my friend for many, many years, nearly 40 years now. We didn't see each other for about 15 years, and then suddenly I turned up on his doorstep here in 1987, and we've been good friends ever since, and he really is one of my longest and best friends, there's no doubt about it. So happy birthday to you, Mike, and good luck for the next 60 years too.